Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, translated by Constance Garnett. Part 1. Chapter 1. Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Everything was in confusion in the Oblonskys' house. The wife had discovered that the husband was carrying on an intrigue with a French girl who had been a governess in their family, and she had announced to her husband that she could not go on living in the same house with him. This position of affairs had now lasted 3 days, and not only the husband and wife themselves, but all the members of their family and household were painfully conscious of it. Every person in the house felt that there was no sense in their living together, and that the stray people brought together by chance in any inn had more in common with one another than they, the members of the family and household of the Oblonskys. The wife did not leave her own room. The husband had not been at home for 3 days. The children ran wild all over the house. The English governess quarrelled with the housekeeper and wrote to a friend asking her to look out for a new situation for her. The man cook had walked off the day before just at dinner time. The kitchen maid and the coachman had given warning. 3 days after the quarrel, Prince Stepan Arkadyevitch Oblonsky, Steva, as he was called in the fashionable world, woke up at his usual hour, that is, at 8 o'clock in the morning, not in his wife's bedroom, but on the leather-covered sofa in his study. He turned over his stout, well-cared-for person on the springy sofa as though he would sink into a long sleep again. He vigorously embraced the pillow on the other side and buried his face in it. But all at once he jumped up, sat up on the sofa and opened his eyes. Yes, how was it now, he thought, going over his dream. Now, how was it, to be sure? Alabin was giving a dinner at Darmstadt. No, not Darmstadt, but something American. Yes, but then Darmstadt was in America. Yes, Alabin was giving a dinner on glass tables, and the tables sang Il mio tesoro, not Il mio tesoro though, but something better, and there were some sort of little decanters on the table, and they were women too, he remembered. Stepan Arkadyevitch's eyes twinkled gaily, and he pondered with a smile. Yes, it was nice, very nice. There was a great deal more that was delightful, only there's no putting it into words, or even expressing it in one's thoughts awake. And noticing a gleam of light peeping in beside one of the serge curtains, he cheerfully dropped his feet over the edge of the sofa and felt about with them for his slippers, a present on his last birthday, worked for him by his wife on gold-coloured morocco. And, as he had done every day for the last 9 years, he stretched out his hand without getting up towards the place where his dressing gown always hung in his bedroom. And thereupon he suddenly remembered that he was not sleeping in his wife's room, but in his study. And why? The smile vanished from his face. He knitted his brows. Ooh, he muttered, recalling everything that had happened. And again every detail of his quarrel with his wife was present to his imagination, all the hopelessness of his position, and worst of all, his own fault. Yes, she won't forgive me, and she can't forgive me, and the most awful thing about it is that it's all my fault, though I'm not to blame. That's the point of the whole situation, he reflected. Oh, he kept repeating in despair as he remembered the acutely painful sensations caused him by this quarrel. Most unpleasant of all was the first minute when, on coming, happy and good-humoured, from the theatre, with a huge pear in his hand for his wife, he had not found his wife in the drawing-room, to his surprise had not found her in the study either, and saw her at last in her bedroom with the unlucky letter that revealed everything in her hand. She, his Dolly, forever fussing and worrying over household details, and limited in her ideas, as he considered, was sitting perfectly still with the letter in her hand, looking at him with an expression of horror, despair, and indignation. "What's this? This?" she asked, pointing to the letter. And at this recollection, Stepan Arkadyevitch, as is so often the case, was not so much annoyed at the fact itself as at the way in which he had met his wife's words. There happened to him at that instant What does happen to people when they are unexpectedly caught in something very disgraceful? He did not succeed in adapting his face to the position in which he was placed towards his wife by the discovery of his fault. Instead of being hurt, denying, defending himself, begging forgiveness, instead of remaining indifferent even, anything would have been better than what he did do. His face utterly involuntarily reflex spinal action, reflected Stepan Arkadyevitch, who was fond of physiology, utterly involuntarily assumed its habitual good-humoured and therefore idiotic smile. This idiotic smile he could not forgive himself. Catching sight of that smile, Dolly shuddered as though at physical pain, broke out with her characteristic heat into a flood of cruel words, and rushed out of the room. Since then she had refused to see her husband. It's that idiotic smile that's to blame for it all, thought Stepan Arkadyevitch. But what's to be done? What's to be done? He said to himself in despair, and found no answer. Chapter 2. Stepan Arkadyevitch was a truthful man in his relations with himself. He was incapable of deceiving himself and persuading himself that he repented of his conduct. He could not at this date repent of the fact that he, a handsome, susceptible man of 34, was not in love with his wife, the mother of 5 living and 2 dead children, and only a year younger than himself. All he repented of was that he had not succeeded better in hiding it from his wife. But he felt all the difficulty of his position, and was sorry for his wife, his children, and himself. Possibly he might have managed to conceal his sins better from his wife if he had anticipated that the knowledge of them would have had such an effect on her. He had never clearly thought out the subject, but he had vaguely conceived that his wife must long ago have suspected him of being unfaithful to her, and shut her eyes to the fact. He had even supposed that she, a worn-out woman no longer young or good-looking, and in no way remarkable or interesting, merely a good mother, ought from a sense of fairness to take an indulgent view. It had turned out quite the other way. "Oh, it's awful, oh dear, awful," Stepan Arkadyevitch kept repeating to himself, and he could think of nothing to be done. And how well things were going up till now. How well we got on. She was contented and happy in her children. I never interfered with her in anything. I let her manage the children and the house just as she liked. It's true it's bad her having been a governess in our house. That's bad. There's something common, vulgar, in flirting with one's governess. But what a governess. He vividly recalled the roguish black eyes of Manuel, Roland, and her smile. But after all, while she was in the house, I kept myself in hand. And the worst of it all is that she's already, it seems, as if ill luck would have it so. Oh, but what? What is to be done? There was no solution, but that universal solution which life gives to all questions, even the most complex and insoluble. That answer is, one must live in the needs of the day. That is, forget oneself. To forget himself in sleep was impossible now, at least till night-time. He could not go back now to the music sung by the decanter women, so he must forget himself in the dream of daily life. "Then we shall see," Stepan Arkadyevitch said to himself,